the greetings in the chat and to see that we have participants from all over the country and all over the world, incidentally. I think, I haven't mentioned this as part of this series, but one of the really exciting things about the past several months in this series is that we have heard from all over the world, actually, countries near and far who have been joining us from beyond even the United States. So it is exciting to know that this series is having the reach that it is, and we are here to welcome you certainly to a happy 2022 and our very first early efforts webinar broadcast of the new year. My name is Dan Worry. I am the Senior Director of Early Learning at the Hunt Institute. The Institute is an education policy support primarily to governors and state lawmakers and other senior state elected and administrative officials around the country. We cover the education policy waterfront really from early childhood on up through K-12 and higher education, but on the early efforts broadcasts, this is our time to talk about the years of early childhood, and we're so glad, as always, to have you with us. We have a fantastic and really kind of pertinent, time-sensitive panel today, and I'll explain why in just a minute. A couple of housekeeping things I want to start with. First off, as always, we will turn to your questions a little bit later in the hour. Would ask, and see so many of you are finding the chat. Please do continue to use the chat to talk with one another. But if you've got a question for one of the panelists, use the Q&A function that is down at the bottom of your screen, and that way we're not having to scroll through quite as many comments. So if it's a specific question that you'd like to pose to the panel, plug it in there. The other thing I always want to mention, we are so lucky and happy to provide these with closed captioning as well. And so if that is a service that you would benefit from, please, there's a closed captioning option down near the bottom of your screen there on your Zoom bar, and just click on that and you should be able to follow along with closed captioning as well. One other housekeeping announcement, this is actually something I usually do at the very end of our sessions, and thought maybe today I would do it at the beginning as well before we lose people. I'm going to screen share here briefly and just tip you off to a couple of cool things that are happening coming soon. So on Tuesday, February 1st, we'll have our next early efforts broadcast. It will be about aligning state child care subsidy systems with the actual cost of quality. New Mexico has done some amazing work here where they have reformed their child care subsidies really in recognition of the actual cost of quality care. If you've been following the conversation about the Build Back Better Act federally, this is something that's actually worked into Build Back Better, presuming it comes to pass. And so a very pertinent conversation for states as they'll be asked to follow kind of a similar process. So we definitely encourage you to join us on Tuesday, February 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I will at some point here in the next couple of minutes drop or maybe Karen can do so. We'll drop the registration link for that particular session into the chat. And then the other thing that I wanted, and here's why I wanted to do this up front, because I want you all to know about this as our kind of faithful viewers here of the series. We're doing something special on March 1st. Our early efforts broadcast will feature Dr. Dana Suskind of the TMW, the 30 Million Word Center at the University of Chicago. Dr. Suskind has written a brand new book, which will be coming out in early April. It's called Parent Nation. And we will be dedicating that hour to talking with her and with Yoli Flores of the TMW Center. And the exciting thing about this is that through some philanthropic support, they are making available copies of the new book, Parent Nation, to the first 500 people who register for that session. Now, the reason I wanted to mention this to you is almost all of those books are gone at this point, a couple of months in advance, but there are a couple still remaining, I think 25 or so. And so want to encourage you, since you are loyal viewers, go ahead and we'll drop that registration link into the chat as well. And if you haven't had a chance to register in advance for March and get your name into the hopper to grab a free copy of Parent Nation, please do, and we will. We'll follow up here shortly with a link that you'll need to go to enter your name and address. And when that book is released in April, they will ship that directly to you. So very, very exciting. So as for today, and let's see here, I think I have stopped screen sharing. So as for today, again, a very pertinent conversation always is how school districts can meaningfully connect with community-based early childhood providers. That's a real passion of mine from way back as a former school district early childhood administrator. But again, with reference to the possibility, at least, of Build Back Better moving along, this is a topic that has the potential to become even more important as the states look at the prospect of universal pre-kindergarten using a mixed delivery sort of system that will incorporate not only school district providers, but private childcare, community-based programs like Head Start, faith-based preschool providers. It will be increasingly important, not that it's not already, but increasingly important for all of the stakeholders in the early childhood world to really be coordinating and convening together. And so it's one of the reasons that I'm just so excited today to be talking about this topic. Our panelists today are all in one way or another connected to the First 10 model, which we want to really kind of shine a spotlight on today. Our guests today are Dr. David Jacobson, who is director of First 10 at the Education Development Center, Dr. Andrea Berry, who is superintendent of the school district of the city of York, Pennsylvania. Dr. Berry, thank you for being with us. Her colleague, Ruby Martin, who is the Chief of Child and Youth Programs at the YWCA of York, Pennsylvania, and Leanne Larson, who is the Early Learning Team Coordinator at the Maine Department of Education. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. David, why don't we, I think it makes sense to start with you as the director of First 10. Warm us up to this topic. Share a little bit about how, what the First 10 model is, how it works, and what it's hoping to accomplish.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So to set the stage for Andrea, Leanne, and Ruby, First 10 is a response to some of the typical challenges that we have supporting young children and their families in our local communities. We're all working really hard, we're doing good work, but our efforts tend to be fragmented. We typically have gaps between early childhood and K-12 education and between education, health, and social services. And these gaps, in effect, place constraints on how effective the different programs in a community can be. Or to put it differently, they're just a whole set of innovative strategies we can implement if schools and preschools and community organizations work together that just aren't possible if each program is working on its own. So how this came about is I've been working with school community partnerships for many years, and in 2017, I did a study funded by the Heising-Simons Foundation. And I looked at communities across the country that were doing this work well. That is to say, they were aligning early childhood and elementary school education and care and coordinating education, health, and social services. So I looked at communities like Omaha, Nebraska, Multnomah County, Oregon, Boston, Normal, Illinois. And I published a study in 2019 called All Children Learn and Thrive, Building First 10 Schools and Communities. And so in it, I propose the First 10 framework, and I am going to share, a slide now. So give me one moment. And there we go. And so we begin with First 10 in the center of this graphic with a commitment to educational and racial equity. And we summarize that in the expression, all children learn and thrive. So by all children, we aim to eliminate disparities by income, by race, other cultural factors. And by learn and thrive, we have academic and cognitive outcomes in mind, health and mental health outcomes in mind, and social emotional learning outcomes in mind. And then we create a partnership that involves our schools, our elementary schools and our districts, our community organizations and families. And usually this partnership is community-wide. It's usually defined by the district. In a large city, we might do a large neighborhood. And then sometimes we also have we anchor the partnership around a single elementary school, the early childhood programs near that elementary school, and really extend them, push the work down to children ages 0 to 4. And what's really exciting is some communities are beginning to combine the district-wide First 10 community partnership with those local elementary school hubs. And York, Pennsylvania was actually the first community to combine to create that combination. So we'll be hearing about that from our colleagues from York. And then in First 10, we implement 3 broad strategies. These are familiar strategies, familiar words. What I think makes First 10 distinctive is that we implement these 3 core strategies across the early childhood elementary school continuum. We do it as part of a coherent plan, and we draw on the evidence-based practices from exemplar communities from across the country. So I'll just give you a little sample of what the work looks like on the ground. Under Collaborate to Improve Teaching and Learning, that can involve collaboration among family child care providers, among home visitors, but it always includes a comprehensive transition to kindergarten plan. We have supports for children and families to make a smooth transition. We do some great work collaborating with our children's librarians. Our children's librarians have been great First 10 partners, but we really emphasize joint professional learning and alignment activities between our community-based preschool teachers, our Head Start teachers, and our district pre-K and K teachers. And I'll just pause for a moment and say that when we do that work, a little bit of magic happens. We've done this work now in Maine and Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Alabama, and we're moving into Michigan. And whenever we do this work, I think it just makes so much sense to teachers. They really are able to make connections, start to align the work that they're doing, and it's a very powerful way to begin knitting our communities together. The second strategy is to coordinate comprehensive services. This is about strengthening our partnerships with our health and social service agencies. It's we improving our referral systems. And here we implement school-connected play and learn groups. So this is taking the tried and true play and learn group model and really emphasizing peer connections, developing strong relationships with families, connections with our elementary schools, and to our health and social service agencies. And then the third strategy is to deepen our partnerships with families in culturally responsive ways. And here, this is about elevating family voice, developing our cadre of champions and family ambassadors, creating structures like family resource centers and family liaisons. And Leanne can speak to some really good work in Maine around these kinds of family structures. And then we often tend to implement a community-wide parenting campaign. And so if there's not something already in place, we tend to use the basics, which was, it's a parenting approach developed by Ron Ferguson at the Kennedy School at Harvard. And it's 5 simple parenting messages that all of our First 10 partnerships can embrace and share with the families that they work with. So we really saturate the community with these 5 simple messages. And then finally, we'll talk about this as we go on, but the final part of First 10 is to lead strategically and continuously improve. We, in effect, have a new partnership in town, and it's important that we manage the implementation of our plans well. And so that's First 10 in a nutshell, and that's the context for the work that Andrea, Leanne, and Ruby will share.
Fantastic, David. Thank you so much for kind of giving us the high level, and now let's take it to the ground and move on to York, Pennsylvania. Dr. Andrea Berry is the superintendent of the school district for the city of York. Dr. Berry, I'm thrilled to hear about sort of this approach from your perspective as a school district leader. Why did you get involved, and tell us a little bit about the community partnerships that you have formed?
Hello, everybody. It is great to be here. It is great to be able to share with you some of what I think is groundbreaking and wonderful and just very, very plain out fun work that we're doing for families and the schools in the city of York. Basically, the reason why the city decided that this was a worthwhile initiative to get into is because we all know that education does not start when kids attend school. It does not start when they attend daycares. It starts from the womb, so we are adopting this concept of Bearcats from birth. And as soon as we know that a family is expecting babies in the near future, we want to be able to be the first to welcome them to our community. And in doing so, we are creating this family atmosphere with all of our partners. The cool thing about this is there's so many great partners, and Ruby at the YW, with Paula at the library, with Dr. Jacobson and the work. So it's this whole community. It takes the homeschool connection to a whole nother level. And so when you are in this work, this very hard, rewarding work, especially now during the pandemic, you need as many community partners as possible. And it's a no-brainer to enter this work because it enables us to work collaboratively to help students from birth. And so those first 10 years, which are paramount according to our research, become, very much the high level focus. So by the time kids get beyond that, they have a huge foundation and they're able to soar. So we start to kind of shrink the academic gaps or the social and emotional gaps before they even occur. So that is our reasoning for getting into this work.
Dr. Berry, I wish I could clone you. We need. I mean, I love the idea of Bearcats from birth, and have felt for a very long time, even as a former school district administrator, that for one reason or another, there is too often kind of a divide between school districts and community-based providers that really should not exist. I do think in some states, even the invent of mixed delivery PreK has sort of exacerbated that in a way that almost sort of pits districts and community-based providers against one another in this enrollment competition. But your spirit toward I think I've said to so many school district leaders over the years just how these are the if you think it's sort of like the raw material that is coming to your business, to use that sort of analogy. Boy, it's just so what a breath of fresh air to hear you as a school district leader thinking about it in that way, and recognizing that right from birth there are ways that the school district can help to support children and families that are ultimately going to be in your best interest as a school district, right? That the kids will perform well. So I look forward to hearing much more about our Bearcats from birth here as the hour goes on. But Ruby, I want to turn to you and let you sort of talk about the same thing from the community-based provider perspective. Talk about your connections with the school district and what it means to be sort of on the flip side of the Bearcats from birth.
Sure, and we are also grateful for Dr. Berry and her initiative here and First 10. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so honored to be a part of this work. First 10 definitely threw a lifeline to York City. We have a very small city. We've been trying to get transition work started for years and years. This has been such a godsend for us in our work with transitions and children moving from community-based programming into the school district. I work for the YWCA of York, as you all know, and we believe strongly in putting a net around the community. So we're so aligned with this work. We want no child and no family to be left or fall through the cracks without services or support especially during transition from infancy or birth through the first couple of years of primary school. So this is the essence of the work that we're doing, truly realizing that all children within the district are district kids. So I love that Bearcat from Birth initiative, even before they turn 5, right? So I oversee the early learning programs in the New York City School District YWCA York program. And currently we have 50 infants and toddlers and 220 preschool age children 3 to 5 in our programs, as well as supporting school age children in the district from 5 to 18 in our out of school time and after school programming. So we believe in research and know that the importance of high quality, best practice based work in early learning and school age programs strengthens districts. We're nationally accredited and we're star 4 in our Keystone Stars Quality Initiative. We believe strongly in the work of First 10. High quality programs focus on social emotional development and enticing an early love of learning in all children. We work with all entities, local libraries, hi Paula and Trish, I saw you're here supporting us, and other community partners to get books into the hands of very young children in our community-based programs. We have begun using the basics, which David mentioned earlier, with our families. We have a very strong family education program. We do mindful fathering. We do the STEP basic parenting program, and now we're using the basics, which we are really excited to be offering workshops for families that are in the district. Our teaching staff conduct comprehensive systems of authentic assessment, sometimes luckily from infancy, if we get the kids young enough, all the way through to they're 5 years old. So you can imagine the expansive amount of data that we could share with primary educators as our 5-year-olds move into kindergarten. One of my favorite parts of this work is being able to share that with our primary educators. So we're working on those processes now. Transitioning to kindergarten comes with tons of stress for families and the kids. Since early learning programs already have developed relationships, we can really offer a lot to support before and during the transition to kindergarten. By partnering with schools, we are able to offer trips to visit kindergarten teachers and classrooms ahead of time. We wanted to start doing this 2 years ago, thanks COVID. So we've been a little delayed in doing this, but it is definitely a goal of First 10 to make these types of things happen. We can support kindergarten registration by getting the schools early access to our families. In early learning, and probably my favorite thing about First 10 work is the teaching primary teachers that there's a real value in the experience and educators that are doing early learning education. So our teachers are second level certified and they follow standards and Department of Ed regulations, and they conduct assessments just like professional primary teachers do. So shared professional development and having early childhood educators share with primary educators the importance of project-based learning and integrated curriculum practices steeped in research is super innovative part of this work that has begun to destigmatize the early childhood profession here in York. That's my favorite part. So lastly, this work keeps us connected through frequent meetings and strategic plans. I love that also, that even through COVID, we've been meeting very frequently with our community partners, our school district, our library, our United Way, other people throughout the community that work with families. This has kept us really connected. The First 10 work has been one of my favorite things to do over the last couple of years here in New York.
That's fantastic. Ruby, thank you so much. And it's just exciting to hear about this partnership in both directions. I want to turn to Leanne Larson of the Maine Department of Education at this point too. And Leanne, share your perspective kind of from the state system level. How is First 10 happening in Maine, and why do you see these connections between school districts and community-based providers as so important?
Sure, Dan, I'd love to. And thanks again for having me. And it's great to see everybody this afternoon. So Maine is, a pretty relatively small and rural state where partnerships are really important for us in terms of getting work accomplished. They enable a lot of collaboration. It's something that we try to support in any way we can. We got involved with First 10 as part of a preschool expansion grant in our state, where we were working with 13 school systems. And as part of that work, we had been really promoting coordination of services for our pre-K age students. And we've begun to notice that although we were doing a better job of coordinating those resources for the preschool year, the coordination wasn't always there leading beyond preschool and in the years preceding kids coming into preschool. So it was, in following the work that David had been doing, one of the things that was exciting to us was sort of using the pre-K kindergarten transition point as like a pivot point to reaching up and reaching back. And so we started working with David to help our 13 school systems develop plans around the strategies that David talked about earlier. And at the same time, felt like it might be short-sighted for us in the Department of Education if we didn't learn right along with the school system. So we formed a state-level cross-agency team made up of folks from our Department of Education, as well as our Office of Child and Family Services, all of whom have a hand in different aspects of children's education and welfare, and really set about to learn more about the model and to think about how at a state level we might be able to support those efforts better. And that's been very helpful to us in terms of thinking about next steps, policy decisions, the kinds of professional learning that we're offering through our offices to help support these types of efforts across our state. So it's been a really nice kind of two-prong approach for us in the state of Maine, and very exciting. And it's been fun to watch the work that's unfolding with our communities over time.
Very exciting. David, I want to go, and again, I'll remind everybody, put your questions down in the Q&A function, and we'll get to some audience questions here in a minute. But David, I have a sort of a statement and a question, which is, first off, this is such a breath of fresh air, but it's almost sad to me that it is. That this should not be the exception to the rule. And so, I just watching the comments in the chat roll in and seeing all of the excitement over these connections as well. What is the barrier? Why was this? I mean, certainly it is necessary, but why do you feel like First 10 was necessary? Why has there been this disconnect between districts and school district providers? And what can we do kind of collectively, to help to really encourage this sort of model to thrive all across the country?
It's a great question, Dan. And whenever I think about this question, I think about Woundsocket, Rhode Island. So a few years ago, we had a state transition to kindergarten conference in Rhode Island. And before it started, this was working with the Rhode Island Department of Education. And before it started, I was going from table to table and introducing myself. And I went to one table and the folks were from Woundsocket, Rhode Island. And I went to the very next table and those folks were from Woundsocket, Rhode Island too. I did kind of a double take. And the two tables actually didn't know each other. And one table was from the district and the other table was from early childhood programs. And I think that's emblematic of the challenge that you're referencing, Dan, and that I think there's a long history and many books written about the gap between early childhood and K-12. I think we all have a lot of work on our plate, and so I think increasingly what's changing this, and what's changing it really on both sides of the divide, is the research that Ruby and Leanne and Andrea have referred to. I think increasingly we've come to an understanding that, that it's important to start early and that we do better when we work together, that the transition is important. But what we've really found in our work is that not only can we collaborate around the transition to kindergarten, but there's simply many innovative strategies that we can implement when we work together across the full continuum. Things like citywide parenting campaigns, things like play and learn groups that connect all families to all our organizations, common approaches to social emotional learning, common approaches to early literacy, so that all of which really makes a difference. What I'll say about Woundsocket, Rhode Island is that day we ended up pushing the tables together. And fast forward a few years, and now Head Start runs pre-K inclusion classrooms in the district schools. Head Start teachers show up for the first 3 days of kindergarten to meet their former students and greet them and transfer trust to the kindergarten teachers. And now in Woundsocket, we're seeing collaboration around the conscious discipline social emotional learning program, around circles of security, early intervention, and all the good first 10 work that you'll hear about today.
Absolutely. And Dr. Berry, I'd be interested in your perspective too, because I know, wearing my former school district hat too. I mean, part of my answer to this is, it's certainly not, I don't think anyone has malicious intent here. Obviously, school district leaders are incredibly busy and incredibly focused on, all of the, obligations and operations of the district. So I think, sometimes it's just sort of a question of just being deliberate, probably, about making the time and making this a priority. What are the benefits that you have seen, though, to the school district?
Well, one of the biggest benefits is, the foundational work. So, I kind of use the cliche or the analogy of like building a house. And if the house isn't built on this solid foundation, you're going to experience difficulties. When we catch families, or when we intervene with families, or when we collaborate with families through community activities before they are even a part of our school district, regardless of in the way that we have siblings or in the way that we have just families that we know through our community partners like Ruby, like Paula, and through organizations like with Leanne, that we get to see these families. So by the time they get to school, any generational mishaps that happen with families previous, because school isn't always a popular thing for families based on their own experience. So we kind of want to break those generational barriers and say, hey, school's a great place, and here's why. So being able to collaborate with these other organizations in a district, that appears small. We're growing though. We have anywhere from 6,800 to 7,000 kids with our transiency. And in that work, we have a 97% free and reduced lunch rate. We've not filled out lunch forms in 20 years. So all of our kids get free breakfast. All of our kids get free lunch. So we're dealing with acute poverty. So there's those are the high level needs. And basically 87 to 90% or 91% of our students are students of color. So we're experiencing, all of these, what people see as barriers. But when we all work together and we catch students from the very beginning at that foundational level, we find that the benefits are huge, because we get an opportunity to say, hey, these organizations believe in the First 10 initiative, because the research is real clear that when you get students at the foundational level, you're going to see the bang for your buck very quickly. So we started out with maybe 2 funders, and now we have 6 funders. So we had a funding through the Regional Early Childhood Learning Center. And then we also had funding from the York Community Foundation, which both organizations were very good to us. And once you see the proof in the pudding, it was almost immediate that I could see differences based on the play and learn groups that we were doing, where we have are what I call baby Bearcats, kids that don't even attend our schools yet, or kids that are attending the daycares and partnering daycares, coming in and participating with their parents, having a good time, reading, writing, smiling, singing, and being able to see that learning is fun and learning is necessary. So it's not very difficult to see the benefits. Also, we are doing this whole idea of transition, like before kids get to school. There's so many different things that we can do as a district with organizations like Ruby's, with Leanne, with Paula Gilbert, with the library. We're able to do so many different things. So by the time the children get to us, we have uniformed forms for transitioning. We have our curriculum folks going in or inviting outside community private daycares and private organizations in for our professional development to learn how to teach kids free reading skills through Haggerty and Foundations, which are, clearinghouse national successful early learning programs. We're getting kids into Foundations earlier and earlier. We're teaching them how to tap. We're teaching them the tricks of the move bell and being able to use tongue coolers and all of these different strategies for reading. So by the time kids get to pre-K, they understand the language, they're comfortable with the community, they're comfortable with us because Dr. Berry has been to, Ruby's one of Ruby's classrooms and been able to introduce herself or read a story during story time. So we're not strangers to them. We become friends, and families begin to trust us. And then if there's needs that need to be met, it's not a burden for families to come to us or entrust us with what they're struggling with. So it's an opportunity to build relationships. And once we establish those relationships, they only grow stronger and give us more of a foundation to help kids. So I'm excited about the work. I'm excited about the partnerships. I'm excited about the potential academic success of the kids. But most importantly, I'm excited to be able to collaborate with people who think that children are our most valuable resource.
I don't know if you've been watching, but in the past 5 minutes, the Andrea Berry fan club has joined in the first branch has been created in the.
I just get really excited. I was an early childhood teacher. Bet you couldn't tell that. And so that,
well, I'm so glad you raised that. I was actually going to ask you because one of the, and it's frankly it's evident.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that is actually, maybe to this point about barriers, many school district superintendents and frankly many even elementary school principals don't come into the work with a background in middle school or in high school and have maybe less experience working with young kids. So having a district leader, Andrea, like yourself, who brings that early childhood background to the table, could hardly be more important, it seems. Let me ask Ruby. We've talked a lot about sort of the benefit to the kids. Want to talk to you about, I was so excited to hear you talking about shared professional development, right? Because to me, that's talk about a no-brainer, sort of, for school district leaders. I mean, professional development that is literally already happening in the school district, where, in some cases, it may just be a matter of setting up a few more chairs or ordering an extra box lunch to make that available to providers in the community who might not have otherwise been able to access that kind of professional development. Talk about the impact of this model on your teachers and what you're seeing from their perspective.
Well, fortunately, we've had one face-to-face professional development that was shared so far, because we did start this work during COVID. But I could tell you that not only are they participating, but I have had teachers lead professional development for primary educators, which I'm telling you, this is setting a tone in my educators who are master's level, second level certified teachers, that they are seen as professionals in this field. And that is, as you know, there's a stigma for early childhood educators that, you know, they don't work the same as primary educators, or they might not be as professional, or they're glorified babysitters. You know, you've heard it all. But this is giving the opportunity to my educators and early learning professionals to really make a difference, to really sit at a table with primary educators to talk about hands-on learning, to talk about project-based, to talk about research and how we are getting best practices into our 3 and 4 year olds. And maybe we can do some of that in the primary grades. You know, we love to see more integrated curriculum and more project-based work in our primary schools. And we'd love to see primary teachers take that by the horns. So I think that that's a real opportunity for our educators to be teaching up into the primary districts. I love the collaboration as a whole, and we have many more opportunities, David, right, in the next few years to get shared PD. I know the next one that we're doing, I think, is literacy based, and that's super important for our early childhood educators who are teaching comprehensive language to children before they even go off to kindergarten, right? This is important work. But I also want to speak just really briefly to kind of supporting the district as a community program also, because what people don't realize is during summers, before and after care, in the early years when the district isn't with the children, there's a role for early childhood and community-based preschools and school age programs to really make sure that we're doing the work that the district needs us to be doing. So aligning our summer curriculum with what the district needs children to maintain over the summer, aligning our before and after care programs and out of school time programs with what the district needs us to be maintaining and supporting for the children, along with the libraries and the United Ways and other systems. We really need to be there to support. So if the district goes virtual for a year because of COVID, the community-based school programs are picking up virtual learning hubs and allowing children to come to programs and still be supervised while their families work in the virtually learning in our programs. So we're supporting the district in more ways than just transition work. And that's an important piece of this as well. Plus, Dr. Berry sits on our board of directors, so she knows the workings of the community-based schools in a more intimate way and can understand the services that we're providing to her families in the district. So this is a multifaceted approach, this First 10 initiative, and I really think that there's a lot of little pieces that we have to remember.
That's fantastic. Ruby, thank you. And Leanne, I want to ask, we've got a bunch of questions that are stacking up in the chat, so we'll do a 15-minute speed round with questions here. But in the same way that we were just talking with Dr. Berry about sort of the importance of her leadership on this topic, no question, having departments of education at the state level emphasize this, has got to be an important message to districts, in every state. What advice would you give to your counterparts around the country in terms of why this is important and something that they should be tuned into?
Yeah, so important, Dan. I think I'm pretty sure it was Andrea who said this, and maybe Ruby too, but I think at the crux of this work, it's the notion of building relationships. And so the relationships that you can build across the state in state government agencies is going to go so far to being able to be responsive to your local communities. If you don't understand what each other is doing, it's really hard to help the local level coordinate those same resources. So I think get to know each other in your state government agencies, reach out, form some cross-agency work, and then partner with some of your local communities and learn from them and with them. I always say that I learn the most when I get to interact firsthand at the local level. And that's what needs to inform our efforts. We can make better decisions at the state level when we understand what's actually happening in grassroots programs across our state. Another thing, a point that I just want to really stress about this work that I think is critical is how much this model really keeps the concept of a whole child, whole family at its center. I think that all of the decisions that I see our 13 communities making are in an effort to make sure that all aspects of children's development is being attended to, that we're thinking about that in transitions, we're thinking about that in the alignment of the efforts that are going on. And when we do that, when we keep children and the whole child at the center, we go a long way to ensuring that they are going to have lasting abilities that are going to last them a lifetime, and that we're not just keying in on 1 or 2 areas of their development. That's just too short-sighted when we do that. So this model has really offered us, I think, an opportunity to keep coming back to that again and again and again.
Well said. All right, well, let's do it. We've got about a little under 15 minutes left. A bunch of questions in the chat. So panelists, I'll ask. We'll try to answer these as succinctly as we can, so that we can get through as many. But the first question, Brianna had a question for Ruby, and probably Andrea, this may be something you want to weigh in on as well. Question about York. How do you connect with the private providers to share assessment results or child progress during the transition to kindergarten? Is there a process for sharing some of what your teachers have learned as kids are moving on up into Dr. Berry's schools?
Yes, we have the best form on earth. It took forever to develop it. We have lots of teachers' input. And we actually had one of our district pre-K teachers develop a form with a small committee of teachers from communities, preschool, from Head Start, early Head Start and other programs. And they developed this form that is not specific to the district, so the charter schools can also use it because we share. And this form has all the information that a kindergarten teacher will need about the children coming into our program. So our pre-K teachers take, the time that it takes to fill out this form and submit it to the district so that they can get it to the appropriate teacher when children start. Now, this is in pilot. We are hoping this works well, but given the fact that the form is now available and the teachers will be using it starting the school year, we're super jazzed about that. So I'm sure Dr. Berry's kindergarten teachers will benefit from that. We also have our portfolio sign off in our program specifically. I can't speak for other private preschools or community-based centers, but in our program specifically, we have a sign off for families that if they want their child's portfolio, which is maintained at least 2 years if they were in our pre-K program, but for more kids, it's often from infancy, because they start in our program so young. But if they want the portfolio to be handed directly to the kindergarten teacher, we can do that for them as long as the district can share who that kindergarten teacher is. Transiency is our biggest problem with this, is that we have a lot of kids that, don't start in the same pre-K or don't start in the same kindergarten classroom, and I think they're going to start in due to the fact that they're moving around so much. But I think that this is something that the district will learn to adapt to.
That's and I anticipated. I knew the chat was going to blow up and ask if there was a way we could share that form. I don't know if it's in a place that you feel comfortable sharing it, but if you are able and you want to share it with me, I'd be happy to pass it along to those who attended today. Dave?
Dan, I can place the transition form in the chat. It's actually, we've just compiled a transition toolkit, worked with the state of Alabama to create Alabama's transition to kindergarten toolkit. And we included some sample forms, including York's form at the end of that toolkit. So I'll place that in the chat. And I would just add that these transition forms, we do this in really all of our first 10 communities, and they've proven to be very helpful as an early small win. That is to say, we bring together pre-K and kindergarten teachers, Head Start teachers, to collaborate on the form. And it's a concrete demonstration early in the process about the value of this partnership. It helps the district. It's something that our partners can go back to their superintendents and their school boards and say, look, this partnership has already yielded benefits for us. And it's something that our pre-K teachers and administrators are happy to be sharing this information. So it's really a good partnership building activity early on in the process. And that's part of how we build, how we're able to build these collaborations over time.
That's great. Already in the chat, ask and you shall receive. Here. So let's jump on another important question. Allison had a great question. I'll open it up, to any of you. Can you speak about the intersection between community-based providers and IDEA services, special education services that maybe the school districts are leading? How are you connecting to help to provide those and connecting those with community-based supports?
But I think the great thing about First 10 and all of the play and learn activities is they're for anyone. It does not matter who, what, where, or when, you are where you are in your learning, whether you have an IEP, whether you are a second language learner. We invite and open these opportunities up to everyone. And our goal is that we touch as many students before pre-K as we possibly can. So we can help when sometimes there are brewing signs of disabilities, like we find out that students are having hearing trouble, and we find out that there's vision problems, or we can get glasses early, or we find out that he's 2 and he hasn't said anything yet, or he's 4 and he hasn't said anything yet. So it gives us opportunities to kind of help with those situations as well. So it's not excluding anyone. If we know that there are programs where we have some of our babies in the community that are that have some complex needs, we're inviting them too. We're inviting their parents too. We're trying to create a one-stop shop, a community hub within the schools, so parents can come in and we can meet the speech path, and the speech path can tell you what to do if your students are not of school age before they get to school to get the services that they need. So it's all about education and making people feel comfortable enough to bring the kids. And once they bring them, we can take it from there. We can get you services if we know you need them. But if we can't reach you to be able to provide those services, it provides this complex problem before you get to school. And then you have these 4-year-olds who haven't been able to see or hear, and you haven't done anything to help them. So it's wonderful to be able to offer these and be really widespread. Social media has been very helpful with that, as well as web pages. And quite frankly, Dr. Jacobson doesn't like to get credit, but having national experts that can say to you, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? That navigational partner that can help you reach a wider span. It's all about, like I said, I keep sounding like a broken record, for building these relationships. It doesn't matter. So we're inviting one and all. And we specifically want to invite parents who feel like they have a struggle with students who have disabilities or are second language learners, because those are the learners that we can be the most influential with and get them the head start that they need.
And that's a fantastic segue into this great question from Carla in the chat. I'll open it up to any of you. Talk a little bit about how parent voice is built into the model. What role do parents play?
So I can start us off, Dan, here, and others can chime in. Really in a number of ways. So I'll take York, for instance. York, we have a citywide advisory committee. And on that, Andrea and Ruby both sit on that citywide advisory committee. And that is an oversight entity. And we have a board member and parent representative there. We're also forming a new family advisory specifically to gather that input directly from families on our work, and that will meet regularly as well. And then throughout in York, in addition, we have 3 cross-city teams that are implementing projects throughout the work. For instance, in our play and learn groups that we're running throughout the city, we're really building in time to build to work with to build relationships with our families and to begin building family leadership, family leaders early on, getting their input into future play and learn sessions as kind of the first step in building leaders that are going to then, we hope, be leaders throughout their children's education careers. And then in addition, we're seeing great work, including, I think in Maine, we saw lots of great work with family resource centers and building family leadership through things like dine and discuss evenings that the schools run. And then that then begins to build your cadre of leaders who then can begin influencing and providing input on all of our work throughout First 10.
I piggyback a little bit on that, David, just to say that, again, it comes back to building some of those relationships. I think sometimes, and Andrea, I think you touched on this too earlier, there's a tendency at times to expect that families are going to come to you in the school, and we need to think a little differently about that we need to reach families where they are, where they're comfortable. And so the play and learn groups are a great example of how that can happen, but there's other ways that you can do outreach. In some of our programs, they reach and work with their local food pantries as a place to provide some of the contact and the support services. They're very strategic too. David, you mentioned a little bit about having a team, and I think that's another area. Have some parent representation on your teams. They can be a voice at the table right from the beginning, helping to shape the direction that you're moving in, and make sure that you're bringing in people that you might not necessarily think about. I'll tell you, one of the most key positions I think our First 10 communities have found is their school secretaries. The person who is most often in touch with families, and by making sure that those individuals know how to connect families and get their voices heard, it goes a long way to making them feel welcome and like they have a voice.
I'd just like to add the community programs also, because we have relationships with families from birth of their child to the time they leave us to go to kindergarten and even maintain it then. So asking the community programs, to identify families that would be interested in participation is an awesome way to get participation in this process. Relationships is what we do, and nobody cares more about families than the person caring for their infants, right? So that's a really important part of this work.
It pains me, but we're just about at the top of the hour, because there's so many great questions in the chat that I would love to get to. Maybe just as a very quick response here, as a final question to all of you. Obviously, looking at the chat, there's a lot of enthusiasm that I'm seeing here around this model and why communities ought to be looking at this. For maybe those that are watching that are not in communities that have developed these kinds of robust partnerships that York has created, that are happening in Maine. What's maybe the best piece of advice you would each give, maybe from your various perspectives to your peers in those communities about how they might take a first step toward having more meaningful connections between the district and community-based providers? Ruby, can we start with you? What would you share with your peers across the country?
I think it's okay to spend a little bit of money and hire professionals, because there's really a process for this. It's important to make sure that you're not trying to reinvent a wheel that's already been invented. Reach out to David and First 10 and see if they can help you with your process, because that's what we had to do. And we tried for years and were unsuccessful in getting this collaboration. And now look, this is happening. So don't be afraid to invest a little bit into this. It's important.
Leanne, I sort of posed a similar question to you earlier about your kind of State Department colleagues, but what's a first step for them?
First step for the department at the department level, Dan?
Yeah.
Oh, I think just invite people to come together and talk a bit about the work that they do every day and who they're reaching. I think that's kind of where we started. And we would, in the process of doing that, you end up adding more people to the conversation. And that's a good thing because it's broadening everybody's collective knowledge about how you can get the resources to the folks that need them the most in our communities. And the other thing, and I think I said this earlier, don't be afraid to partner with your local level. Learn together, learn from each other. The lessons that are going to happen at the local level are going to inform state level decisions and vice versa, right? We want to know what's happening because that's going to help us grow and make better choices.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Berry, what's your advice to school district superintendents who may be tuning in around the country?
I think the best advice is start small. Pick one thing to do and do it well, and then build consistent and often to be able to create a program. You know, we started out with one school and one small group with the play and learns, and then it grew into another school. And now I have this ridiculously ambitious goal of I want all my schools to be first 10 schools. You know, I just think it's the wave of the future. It's necessary, but you have to start small. Find the coalition of the willing, take that little circle and just grow it. You'll be surprised how many people are truly in the business of wanting to help children from birth, and you'll have a bigger circle before you know it. So this work is growing because of the efforts of the team, the enthusiasm that the team has brought together, and you know, the expertise of Dr. Jacobson. So we love the work. We love the first 10 work. We're very, you know, the research speaks for itself, but you start small and you'll begin to see the fruits of the labor very quickly.
Bearcats from birth is our new rallying cry here on. David, I want to give you the last word, best advice, and how can people learn more about the First 10 model?
So again, Dan, thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your audience. Great questions from all. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer more of them. In response to the question, I will piggyback on what all our colleagues around the table have said today. And I'll emphasize this idea of an initial set of starter activities where you can find success. And so we've had a lot of success with, I mentioned child information forms that go from pre-K to K. We've had a lot of luck bringing together pre-K, Head Start, and K teachers around looking at their standards. As a first step, let's look at our pre-K and our K standards together and look and see how they align and connect. We've done start with presentations. How are we teaching social emotional learning in pre-K? How are we teaching social emotional learning in K? Where can we begin to make some tweaks at the end of pre-K and some tweaks at the beginning of K so that transition goes more smoothly? A citywide parenting campaign. We support the basics throughout the whole community. It's something we can all rally around. We get our churches and our neighborhood associations involved. This is something that our red churches can buy into, our blue churches can buy into, rural, urban, we can all be on the same page. So all of these, I think, are good community building activities that then establish the foundation for further collaboration. And there's a lot. I've just started and to your question in terms of how to find out more, I've just started a blog series on learning from the first 40 First 10 communities. And we'll put it in the chat. You can find it at first10.org, but that's sharing the work of a lot of the good work that our communities have been doing.
Fantastic. David, thank you. And I want to thank all of our panelists for taking time to be with us. But more importantly, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to tune in and to participate. I got to tell you, the chat has been a nice blast of oxygen today here as we start the new year, just to see all of the connections being made and all of the positive, great ideas that are being shared in the chat. What a treat. Dr. David Jacobson is Director of First 10 at the Education Development Center. Dr. Andrea Berry, School District Superintendent for the School District for the City of York, Pennsylvania. Ruby Barton leads Child and Youth Program Office at the YWCA of York, Pennsylvania, and Leanne Larson of the Maine Department of Education. What a treat to have you all with us. Thanks again to everyone for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you on February 1st as we talk about child care subsidies and the cost of quality, and then on March 1st when Dr. Dana Susskind joins us to talk about her new book, Parent Nation. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we will see you in February, if not before.